You have to know that you cannot master the waves. Again, metaphor for warriors. Master, but you can navigate around them. In fact, the word navigation comes from the warrior tradition. It's based on the ancient language Sanskrit in India called navigati. So the warrior has to learn how to navigate life, because you can never control the waves of the life. You can control how to navigate around it.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thanks for joining me for the podcast where personal stories can have a global impact. As you heard in the intro, my guest today is Professor Kamran Loghman. Hello, Kamran, and thank you for being here today.
Great to be here, Melvin.
So, from what I've researched, your last name has Persian origins, and you lived in Switzerland when you were younger. When you were 14 years old, you learned how to hypnotize your friends. Was that was that fun for you?
It was a lot of fun. Actually, my mother's side are from Georgia, country of Georgia, and my father's side was Persian. And I left Iran when I was 11 years old, long before revolution. And I moved to Switzerland. And at the age of 14, I got really fascinated with hypnotherapy and hypnosis and all that. But that's what launched me. I mean, I don't really do any hypnosis. I mean that's what launched me. That was interesting. Yeah.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes, I very much did, because it, just opened up to me to the whole world of, people that don't follow the right path. I mean, I had two sides. I mean, one side was my business and academics and all of that. The other side of me was searching for, what's going on in the world. So as I'm becoming a professor of Eastern philosophy and professor of business and all of that, at the same time, I'm a CEO, and I'm sure people will hear from my background. I invented pepper spray for law enforcement, and consulted with a lot of major companies like Apple for decades for senior executives and all that. I have a side which has to do with yoga, and I was really not only academically but deeply practicing yoga under some of the best of the best. I mean, not the type that you find in YouTube or anything like that. I mean, the real lineage people who have been 800 years, 1,000 years of system in India on location. And then at the same time, I did the warrior arts and of Japan, not the modern martial arts, the classical samurais and things like that, since I was 11. So all of these things led me that. So hypnosis, yes, hypnosis was the match that started the whole thing, making me start asking questions.
Nice. So you talked about 800,000 years for yoga instructors or yoga lineage. One of my personal interests is genealogy, but unfortunately, because of slavery, I can only trace my family back a couple hundred years. You've been able to go back thousands of years in your family with primary source documents. Your ancestors were keepers of family heirlooms dating back 1,000 years, many of which are in various museums around the world. So, can you tell me some of your family stories of the saints and sinners who make up your family tree?
Oh gosh, on the mother side, we had Joseph Jandieri, which was a patron saint of Orthodox Church of country of Georgia, and he was a miracle worker. So his miracles are all listed about all the weird stuff that he did. I mean, just bizarre stuff. I mean, the village didn't have water. He took his cane and hit it on the ground, and water came out of the ground, and to this day, water is flowing. I mean, those kind of things. And the family were of the Jandieri family were all royalties going back to year 1200. And on the father's side, the bizarre things you're asking about, my ancestors, really the first ancestor talking about genealogy starts with a famous Sufi saint who was really actually one of the founders of Sufi tradition among the top three. His name was Ibrahim Adham. Ibrahim Adham was actually a king in the city of Balkh, which is today is in Afghanistan, then was in Persia. And he just gave up his kingdom one day and went in the search of truth and trying to find enlightenments and all that. And then one after the other, they were all into the tradition of mysticism until about 400 to 500 years ago, when my forefathers decided that they're going to change path, and they all became physicians. So
Wow.
one went to St. Petersburg and became physician. The other one after that went to Paris, became physician. One of them worked with the grandson of Louis Pasteur. So we had a lot of physicians, generation after generation. I'm the only one that jumped out of the being a physician in the family. So that was really interesting. Yeah, and we had many books. We had many books. In fact, some of the books you read about Rumi poetries and all these other things and all that, we had the originals that we gave to the museums around the world. Our family had. I mean, not myself personally, but our family, had those things for many, many generations. Yeah.
That is so cool. That is so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, you invented pepper spray, and you invented it to be a defensive weapon. Yet, law enforcement officials have increasingly used it for offensive purposes against things like peaceful protesters. So, what did you think when law enforcement sprayed protesters in D.C. in the summer of 2020?
Well, I mean, even going beyond that, you have to see the intention of beginning to do it. I mean, my knowledge of pepper spray really came from my warrior studies. This is why why we're here today, the riseofgiants.com, which is based on enlightened warrior tradition. In Japan, the samurais used a little box which was size of a matchbox, and they used to put powder pepper in it. So when they were in close quarters and they were in combat and they couldn't draw their sword because there was not enough space, they would blow this pepper spray or pepper powder in somebody's face. So I took that, brought scientists and experts and everything else, and this company started developing something which is very scientific. We had engineers, we had quality control. I mean, we had a huge, huge thing. And eventually became a big company that went to 47 countries around the world. The intention of starting that actually started when in LA, a lot of young people don't remember that. The LAPD started beating the hell out of Rodney King. And which we started saying, well, wait a minute, we need something else. I mean, we regardless of the person is innocent or not, you just don't jump into batons and guns and this and that. Can we have something that is effective? Effective doesn't mean that it's not going to cause pain, but at the same time, it's not hurting, it's not killing. And that intention started with the concept of, hey, can we have a safe, effective arrest in a situation? And it has helped thousands and thousands of people in a way that people were committing suicide, and police departments have sprayed them to stop them from doing that. So it has helped in many different ways. But then again, with anything, there's abuse. So later years, I'm talking 2 decades later, I started basically because I wrote all the manuals for federal and from agencies. I created the first certification for them to make sure they're all certified in the proper use of it. So at that point, what happened is that I realized, well, there are some. In any field there is. I mean, you have great doctors and you have lousy ones. I mean, you have great dentists, you have lousy ones. And so I found that I need to speak up. And we have the situation with UC Davis, that the police officers spraying all the students. So I spoke up at that time. And the Washington, D.C. with riots and all that, I mean, you have to take control, but then again, you can't be indiscriminate and start spraying everything around as if, you're just spraying your garden, with insecticide. So I have really spoken loudly about this. Hey, whatever you do, follow the proper training and guideline. And, pepper spray is not designed to shut people up. People have a right to speak. And this is our constitution. But again, if there is violence going on against a police officer or against somebody else and you have to use a tool, well, then, go to your pepper spray. That's what it is made for. No.
Right. Okay, so you're the leading expert in federal court proceedings regarding tear gases, pepper sprays, and mace, and have appeared in numerous court of laws as an expert witness on cases in high media exposure. What kind of questions do they ask you during those types of proceedings?
Gosh, Melvin, I mean, it's so different. There is no generic one. I mean, every case is different. You have people who have sprayed dogs. You have people in corrections departments who have abused inmates. You have, police officers who indiscriminately, they used it too much. You have people who have used it in self-defense. You have people who have used it, going and robbing, a liquor store, and they use pepper spray. So, I mean, there's no generic thing. Unfortunately, there is no generic. I wish there was top 5 things that was there that we could just write something about it and do something about it. It's just human behavior. Everybody just does what they want to do. Yeah.
Okay, so you've lectured on warrior traditions at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, and I lived in Annapolis for 15 years, so I'm well familiar with the Naval Academy. And you taught Indian philosophy at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. What's the best part about those jobs for you?
Well, and then let's add, the fact that I was in the MBA professor at the Kogat School of Business at American University, and was in charge of executive education, which is leadership, innovation, creativity, and all that. Well, it's very fascinating you asked that question, because all three of them are interesting. Because on the MBA side, I was interested not just to teach students, the MBA students, the master's degree students, business, but I was also interested to teach them about leadership, creative thinking, stuff that even the best of the best MBA schools in the country does not teach. So I brought those things in there because, and again, based on the warrior tradition. I wanted to know, because the warriors, we will discuss this further, the warriors were the one who actually created strategies, created leadership concept, and all of that throughout history. And I don't mean when I say warrior, I'm not talking about some brutal, violent, crazy person. We're talking about that's why the word enlightened warriors, the people who are philosophical, deep, wisdom, ethical, and all that. So that helped in the MBA class, to do that. And when the Naval Academy, obviously the environment is totally ready for this. They wanted to know the code and values of the warriors. They wanted to know how these people created strategies. How did they think? Why is it, listen to this one, why is it that the samurais, of Japan did not have PTSD, and whereas modern soldiers have? A lot of studies have been done about that. So these are fascinating things. A lot of our service people come back and they're suffering, deeply suffering. Some of them end their lives. Some of them just go into addictions. They can't deal with this thing. Why? We need to look at those areas. So that was very helpful to start really going back and learn, how can we learn from this tremendous battle-tested thousands of years of tradition of the warriors, of all countries, from throughout different nations, and learn from what they have done. But the unfortunate thing is that many people study warrior traditions. Majority of them they go into the typical war, like the Romans and this, and they don't go to the individual warriors who had a philosophy of life, and they studied that. And it's really interesting because those philosophy of life are very parallel throughout different culture around the world. And when you come to Eastern philosophy, that was just my own interest. Just that, as I told you, the hypnosis just started the whole thing, and yoga and all of that. And I wanted to know what was their philosophy. And something very fascinating happened. Is that as I'm studying that on location and looking at what is going on, and I find out that, for example, the founder of yoga, Lord Shiva himself, and I'm just talking about serious academic studies we're doing here, was a warrior. His son Kartikeya was a lord of war. Why are all these characters throughout ancient time, through all these scriptures and all that, through all the manuscripts, they are all warriors? And the reason for it is the metaphor of the hero or the heroic journey. And heroic journey, just for the audience to just kind of get grasp of how important this is, that I'm not just talking some mythology nonsense here. I mean, even Joseph Campbell, who was the eminent professor of mythology, starts talking about heroic journey, which influenced George Lucas. And because of that influence, he started creating the Star Wars. I mean, the concept of Jedi, for example, you go to ancient India, you have the Jeti warriors who were enlightened. You have the concept of the Force. I mean, in ancient warrior tradition of India, the enlightened warrior tradition, you have the concept of the young warrior recognizes that his consciousness is the most powerful force, and the force is with him. So you have all these things all around. The story of actually, the first Star Wars, which is with the princess and the prince, the princess gets stolen and he has to go find her and all that. It's basically the story of the Ramayana, which is the ancient, text of India, which Prince Rama, he has to go find Sita, his wife, which is, stolen by this demon called Lakshmana or Rakshana. And so Lakshmana was his brother. So these are all there. So the concept of the heroic tradition is all over the place, and it's very interesting. And let me just say one more thing, and you can jump and ask the question, because it's really important for people to understand what the heroic tradition means. It's a metaphor for our life today. All right. It's about a young warrior. This is the story. All right. The young warrior who goes on a journey, and he wants to find that thing that he's looking for. And for each one of us is success, this, that, good relationship, whatever it is that we look at. He's going on that journey of life to find that thing. And as he's going through that, he faces two battles. One is an external battle against enemies and adversaries and weather and life and this, that, the other. The other one is the inner battle, which is within the mind of the warrior himself. He has to fight his own temptation, his own dark shadows. He has to slay the dragon within himself, because he himself is holding himself back from where. And you can imagine what that does to an athlete, to sports, to people who are reaching for success. So, and then eventually this warrior overcomes all difficult challenges, and he comes back, all right, to his village, and he becomes a catalyst to basically change everybody else, because he's become the enlightened warriors. Now, when I say he, let me just make sure that throughout history, we have had formidable women who were enlightened warriors. So we're just using he because most of the stories of the ancient time were just he. That has nothing to do with, sex or anything like that. So, or gender. So this is really fascinating when you look at it from that point of view. Yeah.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating. Appreciate that backstory. So how are you doing well at completing your own heroic journey? Do you know what your journey is?
Gosh, 50 years I've been in it. Absolutely. I mean, there's no way you can avoid it. So it's amazing you asked that question, because it's interesting to me, so that people will know. The heroic journey is not a choice. All right. Either we follow a template, which the warriors call it battle tested, all right, for thousands of years, battle tested through life, not just battle. And they're sharing it with us like a map. Like, I want to go to Mount Everest, I go to somebody who's been there before. You either take that, so your possibility of failures and falling on the ground and all of that is reduced, is never eliminated, is reduced. So you don't have battle wounds and injured, and you get to your plan. Or life is going to force us to go to the heroic journey, and now we're just going to fall on our face, and we're going to have mistakes. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what our purpose are, and all of that happens. So I had to face all of these things. I had to have the guides. I had to basically know what is going on. And the interesting for me is the reason I'm doing this, and I'm doing all these things for free. The website I've created, the podcast I've created, which is riseofgiants.com. The reason I'm doing that is because I have already done the hard work and put all these things together, the translations, many things are not translated, so that people can basically go into it, and they don't have to do everything that I've done to start looking into it, because it needs to be available. Otherwise, once I'm gone, it's gone, and again, somebody else has to pick it up. So I wanted to take the lead and put this thing out there. And the thing that is interesting to me and important and is crucial to the world is not just it develops the person, it develops great leaders. They call them giant leaders of the future. But what is important, it addresses, is the only thing that I have found out, the heroic journey and the enlightened warrior tradition throughout culture. When I say culture, I mean anywhere from India, China, Japan, and the Native Americans here, I mean Polynesia, everywhere you look, I mean, the Viking gods, whatever. You look at that, Africa is just tremendous. It's powerful all over the place. It just depends on where you want to look at. Language may be different, but the symbology and the metaphor is all the same. So when you look at that, it's comprehensive. Why is it comprehensive? Because they look at life, and other tradition is not like that. From a point of view like a table, I'll give you an example. It's a table with 4 legs. All right. They say, hey, listen, a table, if one of these legs falls down, or one of these 4, the table will collapse. So what are these 4 legs? One of them, this is what the comprehensive comes in. One of them is your mental and physical fitness. They're not talking about health. They're not here giving medical advice. Fitness. You have to have energy. You have to have clarity. You have to have focus. You have to have physical energy to be able to achieve whatever you want to achieve. So that is one leg. All right. You don't have to be the best, but that needs to be paid attention to. All right. The other leg on this table is your relationships. Relationships with other people. They look at the relationship as a garden. It has weeds that you need to continuously pull out. And then also you have to nurture it. Continuously you have to do that. You could be very rich, but have a miserable relationship, so you're unhappy. You could have a great relationship, but you don't have enough money to pay your bills. So these things have to be all balanced. The third one in this area is the concept of purpose. All right? And what is this purpose? Is a philosophy of life. They're not talking about religion. They're not talking about spirituality here. All right. They're talking about, purpose. When you get up in the morning, how do you get up in the morning? What is the meaning? What is your purpose in life? Who are you? We're not talking about the grand purpose of the universe here. Why? That they actually address that at another point too. It becomes very philosophical. But your own personal purpose that is different from someone else. What makes you tick? What makes you want to get up in the morning? So you have this 4 leg, which is the fitness of the mind and body. You have relationships. You have prosperity of success. That you have back there. That's another leg. And the last one, the purpose or philosophy of life. So all these forces have to be paid attention, and they create this incredible process, which they call gates, that you have to go through, which is 17 gates to get all these things done. And eventually, at the very last stage, you come to know who you are, and you come to become the powerful warrior, and you become the enlightened warrior, the example, the model. And the last step is the rise of giant leaders, because you have the choice to become leaders, either leaders of your own family, or leader of society, or leader of a business, whatever it is. And now imagine, how a person like that is going to lead. You imagine a person who has not gone through the heroic journey intentionally, is a leader who has anxiety, is a leader who's not ethical, who doesn't follow rules, is a leader who has different moralities, he's not doing it for the welfare of everyone else, so, and the goodness of all that, and society and people and all that. So you have people throughout history have been like that. But then again, just life, most people just live like deers and animals, and we eat, we live, we procreate, and we die. That's not what human life is supposed to be, according to the enlightened warriors. We are here, and we have a choice to fall. We have a choice to fall to the abyss, to the darkness, or we have a choice to rise as giants. And our personal purpose is to become giants of our own life.
That is so interesting. I want to come back to Rise of Giants in just a moment. I've got a couple questions before we get to that again. So I'm curious, is there a conflict between the warrior concept and the peace of meditation?
Not at all. Because the warrior concept is not about physical fighting. In fact, one of the gates of the warrior, all right, let me just give you a few examples of the gates so you kind of understand. The very first gate is called quest for meaning. You have to find your purpose. The second one is called fog of beliefs, that you question everything. You don't just believe every assumptions you have, because your perspective may be wrong. The third one is cave of consciousness, which it builds on the assumptions and all this other thing. What is your mentality? What is your perception? Can you trust your senses and all that? And the next one is what you just brought up, which is the vitality and combative arts. Now, it's important what vitality of combative arts. Yes, you can use that to fight. Yes, you can use these warrior arts that have been created to defend yourself. But it really was meant for the warrior to become strong, to become mentally and physically. When I say strong, it's not about bench press. That they had you have the best of them who go on top of Mount Everest, and they're not 350 pounds full of muscles. They have the stamina, the strength. They're trained themselves to reach there. So they are this combative and the warrior arts, or later on became martial arts. It was really created for them to get this stamina and strength. Now come to the concept of peace in yoga and all that. The concept of warrior is a mindset. Life, they say, is a master archer. It continuously throws arrows at us, and we need to learn to defend these arrows. So this is where it's not about hurting other people. It's about how do you defend against all these forces that are continuously coming to you. They're mental forces. They're battle within yourself. We talk about temptation, addictions, this, that, the other. They're external forces with your boss, with this, with that, with everything else that is. How do you strategically move forward and make sure that you reach your success where you go? Then the concept of failure. Everybody studies success. What are the patterns of success? Well, they warriors do too, because they have to win the victory over the war. But one of the biggest powers, this concept that most people don't even study, is the science of failure. What makes you fail and what you have to avoid. And in this way, they are discussing that. And we all have it. We have it in the Western culture here. Hey, listen, a horse person, in a ranch, if you fall from the horse, you get back on the horse. They have it too. In Japan, they have it among the samurais. Nana karobi yo oki, which means 7 times down, 8 times up. You don't count how many times you fail. You count how many times you get up. But then there is the more, even deeper than that. It means study why you failed 7 times. Okay, and understand why you get up 8 times, because failure is not an option. You always have to get up. You always have to get up. Until the last breath, you have to get up. That's the purpose of life. And so the concept of peace and violence is not even an issue here, because we're talking about an internal mindset. Now, if you bring that into violence, then it comes to another gate of warriors, which is called slaying the dragon. You're acting out of anger. And that is not the state of a warrior. The state of the warrior is equanimity and peace. If you act out of anger, then you're out of the path. Your train has fallen off the track. So that's where lack of peace starts. So it's very peaceful. But peace doesn't mean inaction. All right? You still, when you fall from the horse, you have to have the energy and strength to get up. So that's the warrior mindset.
Okay. Again, that is so interesting. I'm definitely going to go to your website, Rise of Giants, and we'll be talking about that again in just a moment. So, one other question. You mentioned being an MBA professor of leadership, strategy, and innovation at American University in Washington, D.C., where you oversaw executive education. Is American business and capitalism anything like hand-to-hand combat of martial arts?
Not really. No, because it's driven with the different value system. It's not that there's something wrong with capitalism. Is that it's driven, the leaders are driven by greed, power, and they're not in the right place. And I'm not saying everyone is like that, but if you are driven by the right values, by the right codes of conduct, and you have the focus, the clarity, and good intention, and you're running an organization knowing that you're the captain of the ship, you are in this turbulence water, and the boat is going up and down, but the other people, the crew, is depending on you. So you have to have a steady hand. You have to be kind of very serene and quiet. You have to know that you cannot master the waves. Again, metaphor for warriors. But you can navigate around them. In fact, the word navigation comes from the warrior tradition. It's based on the ancient language Sanskrit in India called navigati. So the warrior has to learn how to navigate life, because you can never control the waves of the life. You can control how to navigate around it. So a great leader has to be able to navigate. A good MBA has to learn this. They don't teach these things in school. Imagine if you go, okay, if you're talking about MBA, let's come back to kids. All right? Kids are not being taught the right values. They're not taught that what the purpose of their life is, purpose of their personal life is, that they need to strive to become giant of their own life. If kids are developed like this from childhood, you're going to have really powerful individuals, mentally and physically. They're going to be people that you're not going to have suicide. You're not going to have drug addiction. You're not going to have any of this, because there is meaning in their life. But the sad part is that you can't just blame parents. Most of the parents themselves don't have the philosophy of life that they can pass on to their kids. And this is nothing to be blamed for, because nobody's given them this thing. So they too are struggling in life. This is why we need to have a template. We need to look at people who were giants of life throughout history and say, hey, well, how did you guys do it? And how did it work with you people? And when you look at it, you find repeatedly, again and again and again, throughout history, you have the warrior model throughout every culture. And they're the ones who slay the dragon, and not an average person.
Okay.
They were average originally.
Right. Okay, so as a final question today, and I want to give you as much time as you want to take on this. You're the founder of the Rise of Giants. Tell me about that website, about the idea, how people can get involved in it, what they can get from it, whatever you want to take, however, whatever direction you want to take that. I want to hear all about the Rise of Giants.
.com, which by the way is with an S, Giants. Riseofgiants.com was developed. It's not my personal idea. Of course, I narrate, I discuss it, and all that, as I'm doing right now. It's really the stuff that has been out there for thousands of years. It just happens to me that because I've been a practitioner of it, at the same time, I was an academic person. I managed to pull this in a very crystal clear format into this website. So it is there right now, and it's continuously under development, because it was just introduced about a year ago. It's continuously under development. I'm going and developing all the gates, all the workshops, all the programs, so people can come in and say, hey, listen, how did these people deal with anxiety? How do they deal with poverty? How do they deal with, relationship problem, everyday problems? And they're saying, what was their philosophy of life, purpose, whatever? How do they look at fitness? So all of these things are out there, and it's being continuously developed. And at the same time, of course, I have a podcast under the same name, Rise of Giants, so people can understand the story of the warriors and who they were. So it's almost like a storytelling kind of a thing that is going on there. So my goal here, as I said, is a free program. And my goal is here to have this available in a mobile, version, in a way that anybody anywhere in the world can basically look at it and say, hey, listen, how can I transform my life? How can I transform my career? How can I transform my work? How can I transform the 4 legs of life, which is relationship, the prosperity, the physical fitness, and the purpose that I want to find? And get the energy that I need to go forward? How can I change, regardless of the age? I mean, you can be 85 years old and you still can get up out of bed in a different way that you do right now. And most of it is mental. People, when they get up out of the bed when they're 85, because they have nothing else to look forward to. So it's really, really important to make sure that the giants is not age related. As I mentioned, the kids have to learn about these things. So I made this website, riseofgiants.com, and the podcast, and continuously under development. I'm hoping with my team to be able to completely finish it by the end of this year, so that people can go in there, and there's plenty of already right now in there, and they can really be a place for them that to go there if they're stressed, they're anxious, if they need a little motivation. And this is not going to negate what Michael Jordan said in his life. It's all there, but it gives even more substance to it. That there were people who did this thousands of years. Now you even better understand the mindset of Michael Jordan, whoever it is that is your hero, in life. So that's why this website is there, and it is available to. And of course, I'm available. Anybody wants to email me, ask questions, more than happy to answer.
Okay, again, that's riseofgiants.com, and I'm definitely going to go there and learn as much as I can. This has been so interesting to me today. So our guest has been CEO, professor, and innovator, Kamran Loghman. Kamran, thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
It was a pleasure, Melvin. Thank you for being here for me.
Please go to my website at podcastreallife.com for more information about my guest today and the things we discussed, and the link to his website. That's it for today's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another chance to learn from each other. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.